Wednesday, the 1st of February 2023. In this Skidmark, I'm going to talk about the Russian economy. And I must make it clear, I'm not a economic analyst or a financial analyst. I'm just a guy that reads the information that I see and think about it. And I don't want to pretend or give the idea that I'm a boffin with these things. I just look at the information I see and I try and imagine the overall effect of these things. And as many of you are aware of, I've got a stalker that gives me a lot of shit about my programs. And he makes wild accusations. Initially I tried to debate with the guy, but he's one of those people that doesn't matter what you say. He believes what he believes, and I'm sure you guys know many people. And he sent me this message. The message is in Afrikaans and I'm going to translate it. In short, it indicates that, or accuses me of spreading false news that the West is bankrupt. He agrees that the West has got some tough economic conditions, but the reality is, in his view, that the Russian economy is totally bankrupt. Now that is so far from the truth that it is not even funny. Obviously the guy is not well informed and he gets most of his information probably from CNN. I've got two main documents that I want to discuss around this issue, but I just want to give some surrounding news that can give you an indication of what is going on. And if you look at this article, Russia increased coal exports with South Korea. Data analyzed by Commersant has found that in 2022, supplies of Russian coal increased trade to South Korea by 24% compared to the year before. Short transport distances and affordable freight rates facilitated the growth in deliveries. Now, I include this to give you an idea. This is a normal commodity, not something that is in the headlines or on the mainstream media and so forth. But the volume and the value is enormous for Russia. And it is a growth. And then there's this, Russia and Iran launching a gold-backed stablecoin. Russia and Iran are planning to launch their own gold-backed stablecoin to be used in foreign trade deals. The new currency will be accepted in the Special Economic Region or Astrakhan, where Russia started accepting Iranian deliveries. Why is this important? It is important because the international trust in the US dollar is reaching an all-time low. People and countries want alternative solutions. If one is found and used in a special case, then it can become used widely by all, gain adoption. The US has been defrauding you with the dollar since 1971, as it is backed by nothing but air. USD used to be convertible to gold, but that stopped in 1971, which kept people and central banks stuck with worthless pieces of paper. The sudden predatory move forced everyone to attribute value to USD. Otherwise, everyone would be broke, since the US had the gold reserves. Read more on the gold standard and Bretton Woods for further context. The reality is this, that with the dollar being the international reserve currency, the Americans were able to keep most of the world in line. and do what they tell them to do. But with this sanction war against Russia, all of this split wide open. And all of a sudden, a hell of a lot of countries realized that they are extremely vulnerable with their foreign assets in dollars. They saw how the Americans and the British and the EU stole Russia's foreign assets, and they are nervous about that. And they realize that if it happens to them, they're wiped out. So there's been a steady outflow from the dollar, and the Biden administration's antics has hastened that outflow. Last year in March, I read an article, and the guy said that de-dollarization is really on track, and it should be about 4 to 5 years. But nobody could foresee that Biden would be so stupid and do the things that he did to the dollar. And today we're sitting with a situation that the non-West countries are doing a hell of a lot of trade outside the dollar. And then we see this. India offers Russian oil a backdoor into Britain. UK steps up imports from India's largest refinery, which imports crude from Russia. There's another indication of how stupid the West really is. They don't buy the oil and gas directly from Russia. They buy it through third parties and pay 3, 4, 5, 6 times more. Where is the logic and the sanity in that? And then you get this. Ditch the dollar. India hoping rupee-ruble trade mechanism expands with Russia. New Delhi is said to be exploring ways to facilitate more trade using local currencies after a recent meeting with officials from Moscow. Rules on how to formalize the settlements are yet to be finalized, but as India has become Moscow's largest buyer of oil in recent times, it's now looking to close the deficit with electronic items going the other way. Bangladesh, Mauritius, Sri Lanka also keen on setting up similar mechanisms for rupee trade. Now, these things may sound insignificant to the casual observer and obviously to my Nazi stalker, but the reality is that the drain of trade away from the dollar is picking up speed at a hell of a rate. And if that dollar loses its financial standing, international standing, as a reserve currency, the American economy is going to be in deep shit. I've read an article this morning in which the guy said that it is quite obvious that very few people actually realize what the implications for America will be. Then I get to one of the articles that I want to discuss. And that was written by a Japanese journalist. The Russian economy managed to survive despite Western sanctions. Japanese journalist Wataru Nakamura expressed the opinion that the Russian economy coped with the international pressure, and one of the reasons for this was the Russian mentality. Almost a year ago in March 2022, the Japanese were convinced that the Russian economy would collapse due to the sanctions. However, at the end of the year, it not only showed incredible resilience, but Russia was the only country whose economic growth forecast was revised upwards. The stability of the Russian economy was affected by continued trade with China and India, energy exports, and food self-sufficiency. Russian people are very adaptive. We know how to adapt to circumstances, survive and become even stronger. In addition, we are able to analyze and think ahead and then act. Actually, this is why our country is holding on so steadfastly. Understanding and planning for the possible development of events long before the start of the special military operation, the Russian government began preparations in advance for possible sanction measures. Moscow has always understood that the defense of the LPR, DPR and other lands with the Russian people will not be easy and will encounter obstacles from the West. Therefore, ties were built with reliable partners. The pace of import substitution was increased, the practice of parallel imports was tested, and many other steps were taken to soften the blow from new international sanctions. Of course, the struggle, including the economic one, is not over yet, and there are difficulties ahead, since a peaceful sky overhead and independence are expensive. But we are ready to fight for it, and there is no doubt that the freedom and life are worth all of today's efforts and hardships. Now, this was a response from a Russian journalist on the article that the Japanese journalist wrote. And it is interesting to take note of the fact that the Russian military-industrial complex is not interwoven into their civilian economy. There is cross-contacts, yes, a lot of that, of civilian industries providing commodities to the military-industrial complex, but that civilian manufacturers still service the civilian market. So the Russian people is not experiencing a wartime economy. Now, this morning, an article, not this morning, a day or two ago, an article appeared from the IMF. Now, the IMF sits at the heart of the American deep state. That's important to take note of and remember. So they've got a hell of a lot of influence. We know how the IMF has been operating around the globe. But, as I say again, they sit at the heart of the American deep state. So whatever they publish, it is good to take note of it. The IMF predicts Russian economy to grow in 2023. According to the January 22 World Economic Outlook, the International Monetary Fund improved its forecast for the Russian economy, exceeding that of the Russian Ministry of Economic Development and the World Bank. According to the IMF, Russia's GDP contracted 2.2% last year versus 3.4% expected. This year, the fund expects Russia's GDP to rise by 0.3% versus 2.3% decline expected in the October forecast, and by 2.1% in 2024. Economic growth in the US is projected to slow from 2% in 2022 to 1.4% in 2023, then to 1% in 2024. China's growth was 3% in 2022. This year it's expected to reach 5.2% and 4.5% in 2020. India's economy grew by 6.8% last year. A slight slowdown to 6.1% is expected this year, and in 2024 the growth will return to the 2022 levels. Global growth is projected to decline from 3.4% in 2022 to 2.9% in 2023, then rise to 3.1% in 2024. Compared with October forecast, the 2022 results were more optimistic by 0.2%. Why is this important? Take note. It is the non-West countries that are growing. I've seen articles about the disaster in the German economy, the disasters in the UK economy. Things are looking bad for Europe, and they've got no chance of looking at growth pretty soon. For the simple reason they cut off energy. They don't have energy. They don't have it. They are scrounging around the globe, and they are paying through their noses. Their industries are collapsing. I've read an article in which a guy said the German industrial base has been damaged beyond repair. Now try and imagine what is going to happen if the German industrial base disappears? How many unemployed people is there going to be? What is the stress going to be on the social programs? And where is the money going to come from? Germany was the backbone financially of the EU, and now it's gone. That is gone. The UK is collapsing. They are going into full recession. Europe, most of the economies are going into full recession. America is heading towards a recession. But my Nazi stalker tells me the Russian economy is in tatters, as Ursula said. Obviously, he needs to dig deeper. Then we have this from the Russian central bank. Russia's foreign trade surplus reaching $282.3 billion in 2022. The foreign trade surplus in Russia soared more than 1.6 times year on year and amounted to $282.3 billion in 2022, the Central Bank of Russia reported on Tuesday. The current account surplus surged almost twofold to $227.4 billion in the reporting period. The increase of the current account surplus is associated with significant expansion of the positive balance of goods and services as a result of growth of the cost volume of supplies, driven by a rise in global prices for main commodities of Russian export, the regulator said. And that is figures that can be checked. So it doesn't look like it's the Russian economy that's in tatters. And this image I'm just going to show for the reason that the West is scrounging and scraping the bottom of the barrel to try and find a handful of tanks to send to Ukraine. All the militaries of the major players, the guys say they don't have, they're out of stock. They just don't have to give to the Ukraine. But look at this. This factory makes the T-90 tanks for Russia. They produce between 80 and 100 a month. Think about that. But this is the economy that is in tatters. And then we get to this. The EU Commission President urges private investors to get involved in the Ukraine conflict financially. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, Ursula von der Leyen said that Ukraine has received a lot of help from various states, but now it's the private investors' turn. My call on you is that we need your helping hand on board, she said while sitting with the WEF's Klaus Schwab. Reality check for her? Who the hell is going to invest in a country that is at war? And at war with the biggest nuclear power in the world. Who is going to do that? We have seen it, what is going on there. Russia is taking territory from the Ukraine. So what happens to you as a private investor from the West that has invested in, let's say you invested in an agricultural block in the Kherson region and paid millions of dollars for that land, and you were producing wheat on it. And now all of a sudden, that land doesn't belong to the Ukraine anymore, it's now Russian land. Good luck with that land claim. Same for factories and things. These people are crazy, but this one are crazy, has bankrupted Europe. And now she wants the private sector to go and bankrupt themselves. And then we get this. The witch of the West came out to say how bad is Russia and how they are going to destroy with the sanctions. Sanctions the world has never seen before. Yes, that is right. No one sanctioned the US or Britain or any other NATO country when they bombed and destroyed or invaded Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, and currently they're busy doing the same shit in Yemen. This has never been about peace or justice or human rights, but about maintaining the Western boot on the neck of every nation. And that is the truth. The reality is that we the ordinary people, will have to get our minds wrapped around the reality that the Western Empire is crumbling, and it's crumbling at a hell of a rate. We will have to change our views. We will have to change our way of looking at the world. The West is done, and many people will differ from me. That's your right. But if you look at the facts, the West is done. Thank you for your support. Please give me a like and subscribe and share this thing. Have a great day.